Maya Chen said she needed help with her portfolio. She said it casual, like asking to borrow a phone charger, standing in my doorway with her laptop bag sliding off her shoulder, and that smile she uses when she wants something but doesn't want to make it sound like begging. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Alex Rivera. I'm 24, graduated from Parsons with a degree in graphic design 8 months ago, and I freelance from a converted garage studio behind my parents' house in Riverside, California. The studio used to store Christmas decorations and broken lawnmowers, but I spent 3 weeks last summer scraping paint, installing proper lighting, and building custom shelving for my equipment. Now it holds 2 monitors, a drawing tablet, a printer that actually works, and a coffee maker that runs constantly. I keep banker's boxes full of concept sketches organized by date along the west wall, each box labeled with black Sharpie in my careful block letters. January 2024, February 2024, March 2024. The kind of organization that comes from working alone and needing to find things fast when clients call with changes. My daily routine starts at 6:30 a.m. with coffee and checking emails. By 7, I'm reviewing yesterday's work, making notes on what needs fixing. Client calls happen between 9 and 11 when people are settling into their offices and remembering they have projects due. Lunch is usually a sandwich eaten while scrolling through design blogs, keeping track of trends, studying what other people are creating and selling. Maya is my younger sister, 22, art student at Cal State Northridge, the kind of person who shows up to family dinners with paint under her fingernails and stories about professors who don't understand her vision. She's talented, always has been. Our parents' refrigerator still has her elementary school drawings tucked under magnets, faded but too precious to throw away. She majors in fine arts with a focus on sculpture, but lately she's been talking about expanding into commercial design. Getting her portfolio ready for internship applications, making connections, building a professional presence that extends beyond gallery walls and student exhibitions. I just need to see how you organize everything, she said, shifting her weight in my doorway. Like your process, how you present concepts to clients. Maya gestured toward my monitors like they held secrets she couldn't crack on her own. I've got all these pieces, but I don't know how to make them look professional. I glanced at the clock on my computer screen, 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had a logo revision due by Thursday and a packaging concept that needed 3 more rounds of sketches. But Maya looked genuinely stuck. And family helps family. That's what our mother, Carmen Rivera, has said since we were kids fighting over who got the last piece of cake. Sure, I said, stepping back to let her into the studio. What kind of timeline are you working with? Maya dropped her bag next to my desk chair and unzipped her laptop. Applications are due next month, but I want to get everything submitted early. You know how competitive these internships are. She wasn't wrong. The design world chews up new graduates and spits them into coffee shop jobs if they're not ready. I'd watched classmates with stronger portfolios than mine struggle to find work, sending hundreds of applications into digital voids that never responded. Maya opened her laptop and clicked through folders, digital files with names like Sculpture Series 3 and Mixed Media Final. Her work appeared on screen in a slideshow of images that looked more like art documentation than design presentations. Beautiful pieces, but photographed against cluttered studio backgrounds with harsh fluorescent lighting that flattened the colors. See what I mean? She said, scrolling faster. Everything looks amateur compared to your stuff. I pulled up my own portfolio on the second monitor. Clean white backgrounds, consistent lighting, professional typography introducing each project. Logos I designed for local restaurants, packaging concepts for startup beverage companies, branding materials for a yoga studio in downtown Riverside, work that paid bills and built credibility. It's mostly about presentation, I said, comparing our screens. Your work is strong, but clients need to see it in context, like it already exists in their world. Maya leaned closer, studying the way I'd formatted project descriptions and client testimonials. Could you show me how you set up these layouts? Like what fonts you use, how you organize the sections? The next 2 hours passed faster than I expected. I walked her through my template system, explaining how I sized images for maximum impact, chose typefaces that complemented each design style, and wrote project descriptions that focused on problem solving rather than artistic expression. "This is exactly what I needed," she said around 4:30, saving files to her laptop. "I never would have figured this out on my own." She packed up her things and hugged me before leaving, the kind of quick squeeze that says thank you without making it weird. I watched her walk across the backyard toward the main house, laptop bag bouncing against her hip, already pulling out her phone to check messages. I went back to my logo revision, tweaking the curve of a letter that had been bothering me all morning. The client wanted something more dynamic, but hadn't specified what that meant. So I was working through variations, saving each version with numbered file names for easy comparison. By 6 p.m., I'd sent 3 options and started sketching ideas for the packaging project. A beverage company called Mountain Peak wanted something that would stand out on crowded supermarket shelves while conveying natural ingredients and environmental responsibility. They'd given me a mood board full of forest imagery, earth tones, and hand-lettered typography that looked effortless but took hours to execute properly. I pulled out my sketchbook and started drawing. Bottle shapes that suggested tree trunks, logo concepts that incorporated topographic lines, color palettes inspired by hiking trails and morning fog. The kind of preliminary exploration that never makes it into final presentations but determines whether the finished design actually works. My phone buzzed around 8 p.m. with a text from Maya. "Already started reorganizing everything. This is going to be so much better. Thank you." I sent back a thumbs up and kept sketching. The studio felt quiet and productive, the way it always does when work flows without interruption. I had my process, my organization system, my carefully built client relationships. Maya had her talent and her drive to break into commercial design. We both had our paths forward. Outside, the California evening settled into that perfect temperature where you can work with windows open and not think about air conditioning. Neighbor dogs barked occasionally in distant yards. Someone was grilling dinner 3 houses down, smoke drifting past my studio windows. I finished the Mountain Peak sketches around 9:30 and photographed them with my phone to add to the project folder. Tomorrow, I'd start translating the strongest concepts into digital formats, building variations, preparing presentation materials that would help the client visualize their product on shelves. Maya texted again around 10 p.m. Question about file formats. Do internships usually want PDFs, or should I put everything in a presentation? PDFs for email, presentation format for interviews, I replied. Make sure everything is high resolution, but not so large that emails bounce back. Got it. You're the best. I turned off the studio lights and walked back to the main house. My parents were watching the news in the living room, volume low, my father's reading glasses reflecting the television screen. They looked up when I came in, the kind of automatic parental check-in that happens without conversation. "Good day?" my mother asked. "Productive," I said. "Helped Maya with her portfolio." My father nodded in approval. He runs a small accounting firm downtown and understands the importance of presentation, how the same numbers can look completely different depending on how they're organized and formatted. I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen and headed upstairs to my room. Tomorrow would bring client feedback on the logo revision, more sketching from Mountain Peak, and probably another project inquiry if the week followed its usual pattern. Steady work that paid consistently and built toward bigger opportunities. Maya had her internship applications to focus on, her sculptures to document professionally, her transition from fine arts student to commercial designer, assuming she got accepted somewhere that could teach her the business side of creativity. We both had our work cut out for us, but that night, everything felt manageable, organized, moving in the right direction at the right pace. I set my alarm for 6:30 a.m. and fell asleep thinking about bottle shapes and topographic lines, the way design problems solve themselves overnight when you let your brain work without forcing solutions. 3 days later, Maya called while I was deep into the Mountain Peak project. The phone rang just as I had found the perfect balance between organic curves and geometric structure for their bottle design. I almost didn't answer, but family calls during work hours usually mean something urgent. Alex, you need to see what I'm working on, she said without preamble. Her voice carried that excited edge she gets when inspiration strikes. Remember that eco-friendly packaging concept you mentioned? I think I cracked something amazing. I saved my work and leaned back in my chair. What kind of concept? Sustainable luxury, like premium products that don't apologize for being environmentally conscious. I'm sketching these incredible packaging ideas that could revolutionize how brands approach green marketing. Maya had always been good at identifying trends before they became obvious. In high school, she had started making jewelry from recycled materials months before it became a social media phenomenon. Her art professors constantly praised her ability to spot cultural shifts and translate them into visual concepts. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off.
That sounds promising, I said, genuinely interested. What's your angle? I'm thinking about applications due next week, and I want to include something that shows commercial viability, not just artistic vision. These companies are looking for designers who understand market forces, right? She wasn't wrong. The most successful design students I'd known could speak both creative and business languages fluently. They understood color theory and consumer psychology with equal sophistication. Definitely. What specifically are you working on? Maya's enthusiasm bubbled through the phone. I can't describe it properly over audio. Can I come by tomorrow afternoon and show you? I promise I won't take up too much time. Just want your opinion on whether it's portfolio ready. I checked my calendar. Thursday afternoon was blocked for client calls, but nothing that couldn't be rescheduled if needed. Sure, come by around 2. I should have Mountain Peak feedback by then anyway. Perfect. And Alex, thank you for being so supportive. I know you're busy with paying clients, and I really appreciate you making time for my student projects. After we hung up, I returned to the bottle designs with a nagging sense that something felt different about Maya's request. Usually, she asked specific questions about technique or presentation. This time, she'd been vague about details while emphasizing commercial applications. Maybe she was finally taking the business side of design seriously. Thursday arrived gray and overcast, typical October weather in Riverside. I spent the morning refining Mountain Peak concepts based on client feedback. They loved the topographic elements, but wanted more emphasis on premium positioning. Apparently, their target demographic would pay extra for products that felt exclusive rather than just environmentally friendly. I was adjusting color palettes when Maya knocked on the studio door. She carried a large portfolio case I'd never seen before, professional-grade leather with brass hardware that looked expensive for a student budget. New portfolio? I asked, nodding toward the case. Birthday gift from Dad, she said, setting it carefully on my desk. He said if I'm serious about commercial design, I need to look the part. Maya unzipped the case and pulled out a series of mounted boards, each one showcasing a different packaging concept. The work was sophisticated beyond anything I'd seen from her before. Complex layouts that demonstrated deep understanding of brand hierarchy, consumer psychology, and production constraints. The first board showed a line of organic skincare products with packaging that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Seed paper containers that could be planted after use, typography that looked hand-lettered but maintained perfect readability, color schemes that suggested both luxury and environmental consciousness without feeling preachy. Maya, this is incredible, I said, studying the details. When did you develop these skills? She glowed at the praise. I've been working constantly since our conversation Tuesday, like staying up until 3 a.m. because I couldn't stop generating ideas. The second board featured beverage packaging that made Mountain Peak's brief look elementary. Glass bottles with embedded wildflower seeds in the labels. Caps made from compressed agricultural waste. Branding that felt both artisanal and scalable for mass production. The concept is biodegradable luxury, she explained, pointing to detailed technical drawings that showed how each element would decompose. Products that deliver premium experiences while leaving zero environmental footprint. I flipped through the remaining boards,
each one more sophisticated than the last. Cosmetics packaging that doubled as plant starters, food containers designed to break down into soil nutrients, every concept backed by research citations and cost analysis spreadsheets. This is graduate level work, I said honestly. These concepts are more developed than half the projects in my portfolio. Maya beamed at the praise. Really? You think they're strong enough for internship applications? Absolutely. Any company would be lucky to have someone thinking at this level. She carefully repacked the boards, handling them like precious artifacts. I'm submitting to 7 firms next week. Target, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, some smaller agencies that specialize in sustainable branding. This portfolio should set me apart from other applicants. As Maya gathered her materials, something nagged at me about the technical sophistication of her work. The research depth suggested weeks of development time, not 3 days of late nights. But students sometimes worked faster under deadline pressure, and Maya had always been capable of intense creative bursts. Good luck with applications, I said, walking her to the door. Let me know if you need reference letters or anything. Actually, Maya paused at the threshold. Would you mind if I mention that we've collaborated? Not claiming you did any work, just that you've provided professional mentorship. These companies love seeing family support networks. The request felt reasonable. I had mentored her, and showing family connections in creative industries often strengthened applications rather than weakened them. Sure, that's fine. Just be specific about what kind of guidance I provided. Of course, professional presentation techniques, industry insights, portfolio organization. Nothing more than what actually happened. After Maya left, I returned to Mountain Peak with renewed focus. My concepts suddenly felt pedestrian compared to her biodegradable luxury approach. Maybe I needed to push further beyond safe commercial territory into genuinely innovative solutions. I spent the afternoon sketching wilder ideas. Bottles that changed color based on freshness. Labels embedded with tracking technology for recycling programs. Packaging systems that engaged consumers in environmental activism through product use. By evening, I'd developed 3 concepts that felt significantly more ambitious than my original submissions. The client might find them too experimental, but at least they pushed boundaries instead of playing it safe. Friday morning brought an unexpected email from Maya. Submitted all applications, feeling confident about portfolio strength. Thank you again for everything. You're the best brother a designer could ask for. Something about the message felt oddly formal, like she was establishing a written record of our interactions. But maybe she was just excited about completing a major milestone in her career development. The weekend passed quietly. I finished Mountain Peak revisions and started preliminary work on 2 new projects. A restaurant chain wanted logo updates for their expansion into health-conscious markets. A tech startup needed branding materials for their sustainable office supply platform. Both projects required exactly the kind of environmental consciousness Maya had demonstrated in her portfolio concepts. The coincidence felt notable, but not alarming. Sustainable design was trending across multiple industries, and observant designers naturally gravitated towards similar solutions. Monday afternoon, Maya texted asking if she could use me as a reference for internship interviews. Just basic stuff about work ethic and creative thinking, nothing detailed. I agreed and spent Tuesday preparing talking points about her artistic development, creative problem-solving abilities, and professional growth potential. Standard reference material that emphasized strengths without overselling capabilities. Wednesday brought the first warning sign that something felt off about the situation. I was reviewing Mountain Peak's final approval when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. The caller identified herself as Jennifer Walsh, senior designer at EcoLux Brands, a sustainable packaging firm based in Los Angeles. "I'm calling about Maya Rivera," Jennifer said. "She listed you as a professional reference for our internship program." "Of course," I said, pulling up my prepared notes. "Maya is an exceptionally talented designer with strong conceptual thinking and interesting,"
Jennifer interrupted. "I'm more interested in discussing the collaborative work you've done together. Her portfolio includes some remarkable biodegradable packaging concepts that demonstrate unusual sophistication for a student designer." My stomach dropped slightly. I provided mentorship on presentation techniques, but Maya developed those concepts independently. I see. The technical specifications and cost analysis spreadsheets suggested professional industry experience. Could you elaborate on how much guidance you provided on the research and development phase? The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Jennifer asking increasingly specific questions about collaboration levels, concept development timelines, and technical consultation. Her tone remained professional, but each question felt like another piece of evidence being cataloged. After we hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen with growing unease. Maya's portfolio concepts had been impressive, but Jennifer's questions suggested they might be too impressive for a student working alone. The technical depth, research sophistication, and production knowledge demonstrated expertise that typically took years to develop. I pulled out my sketchbook and flipped to the mountain peak preliminary drawings I'd been working on the day Maya first asked for help. Organic curves, environmental themes, biodegradable materials, premium positioning. The same conceptual territory her portfolio had explored with remarkable similarity. Maybe it was a coincidence. Environmental packaging was the obvious direction for ambitious designers in 2024. But the specific technical solutions, research approaches, and even visual styling felt uncomfortably familiar. I closed the sketchbook and tried to focus on current projects. Maya had always been talented, and students could develop sophisticated work under the right pressure and inspiration. Jennifer's questions might have been standard due diligence rather than suspicion about plagiarism. But the nagging feeling persisted through the rest of the week, growing stronger each time I thought about the timeline between Maya's portfolio request and her finished concepts. The second reference call came Thursday morning while I was debugging a client's website banner that refused to display correctly on mobile devices. This time, the caller introduced himself as Marcus Thompson from Greenway Innovations, a startup accelerator focused on sustainable consumer products. "Maya Rivera listed you as a professional mentor," Marcus said. "I'm particularly interested in understanding her design process for the biodegradable packaging series." I minimized the banner mock-up and grabbed a pen. "What specifically would you like to know?" The technical specifications in her portfolio demonstrate remarkable depth: carbon footprint calculations, supply chain analysis, regulatory compliance documentation. This level of research typically requires industry connections and specialized knowledge. My pen stopped moving. I provided general guidance on portfolio presentation, but Maya conducted her own research. Interesting. The cost analysis spreadsheets reference wholesale pricing from manufacturers I recognize from our supplier database. These aren't publicly available figures. The conversation lasted 15 minutes, with Marcus asking detailed questions about Maya's access to industry resources, professional networks, and technical consultation. His tone remained neutral, but each question felt like another piece of evidence being cataloged. After hanging up, I pulled up Maya's contact information and started typing a text. "Got another reference call today. Seems like companies are really interested in your portfolio." I deleted the message before sending it. Something felt wrong about fishing for information through casual conversation. Instead, I walked to the main house and found my mother in the kitchen sorting through mail at the breakfast table. Carmen Rivera had worked as an office manager for 23 years before retiring, and she possessed an intuitive understanding of workplace dynamics that often proved more accurate than formal business training.
Mom, hypothetical question. If someone asked you for help organizing a presentation, then produced work that seemed too sophisticated for their experience level, would you be concerned? She looked up from a stack of insurance statements. Concerned about what? Whether they'd actually done the work themselves. Carmen set down the mail and gave me her full attention. "Is this about Maya's internship applications?" I hadn't mentioned the reference calls to my parents, wanting to avoid creating family drama over what might be simple misunderstandings. Just thinking through professional ethics scenarios. Maya's always been ambitious, my mother said carefully. Sometimes ambition makes people stretch beyond their comfort zone. What if they stretched beyond their capability zone? Carmen studied my expression with the focused attention she'd perfected during decades of managing office personalities. Alex, is there something specific you need to tell me? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Just got interview requests from 3 companies. Portfolio must be stronger than I thought. Celebrating tonight if you want to join. I showed my mother the message. She read it twice, then looked at me with raised eyebrows. 3 companies responded that quickly? Apparently. To a student portfolio? That's what she says. Carmen handed back my phone. Maybe you should ask to see the interview invitations. That evening, I found Maya in her room preparing for virtual interviews. She transformed her space into a professional backdrop with carefully arranged books and a small succulent plant positioned to suggest creativity and environmental consciousness. Her laptop displayed a calendar packed with interview appointments scheduled throughout the following week. Congrats on the interviews, I said, leaning against her doorframe. Thanks. I honestly didn't expect this level of response. Apparently, sustainable packaging design is really hot right now. She clicked through email confirmations from Target's Sustainability Division, Procter & Gamble's Innovation Lab, and 2 boutique agencies specializing in environmental branding. Each message expressed enthusiasm about her portfolio concepts and requested detailed discussions about her design process. They all mention the technical sophistication of your work, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Maya's smile flickered for just a moment. I guess all those late nights researching paid off. Where did you find the supplier pricing data? Marcus Thompson mentioned some of those figures aren't publicly available. Marcus Thompson? From Greenway Innovations, he called for a reference. Maya busied herself adjusting the laptop camera angle. Oh, I found most of that information through academic databases. Cal State has pretty good access to industry reports. The explanation sounded plausible, but something in her tone suggested carefully prepared responses rather than spontaneous recollection. I decided to probe more directly. Could you show me which databases you used? I might want to access that information for my own projects. Sure. Let me get back to you on the specific sources. I have them bookmarked on my school laptop. Maya turned back to her interview preparations with obvious dismissal energy. I retreated to my studio with growing certainty that something significant was being concealed. I spent Friday morning reviewing my own project files, looking for connections between my work and Maya's portfolio concepts. The parallels were subtle but consistent. Environmental themes, biodegradable materials, luxury positioning, technical innovation, areas where my professional research had concentrated over the past 6 months. My Mountain Peak sketches from 2 weeks ago showed preliminary concepts for seed paper labels and compostable bottle materials, ideas I'd rejected as too experimental for that particular client, but had documented for future reference. Maya's portfolio featured remarkably similar solutions, developed to completion with professional-grade execution. I pulled up my computer's file access history and checked which documents had been opened recently. The timestamps showed normal patterns until Tuesday afternoon when several research folders had been accessed while I was meeting with a client in downtown Riverside. Someone had spent nearly 2 hours reviewing my concept development files, supplier contact lists, and technical specification documents. The access had occurred from my studio computer, which meant either I'd forgotten about working that afternoon or someone else had used my workstation. Maya was the only person with regular access to the studio, and Tuesday was the day after she had submitted her internship applications. I checked the browser history and found searches for manufacturing processes, environmental certifications, and cost analysis methodologies, all conducted during the time period when my client meeting was scheduled, all focused on topics directly relevant to Maya's portfolio concepts. The evidence felt damning, but not conclusive. Maya could have used my computer for legitimate research while I was away. Students often needed access to professional-grade software and databases not available through university resources. The timing might be coincidental rather than deceptive. But the combination of sophisticated portfolio work, industry-specific knowledge, and computer access during my absence created a pattern that felt too convenient to ignore.
Saturday morning brought another reference call, this time from Ashley Martinez at EcoDesign Solutions. Her questions focused on Maya's experience with regulatory compliance and supply chain optimization, technical areas where student designers typically had limited knowledge. The portfolio demonstrates unusual familiarity with FDA packaging requirements and international shipping constraints, Ashley explained. These aren't topics covered in undergraduate programs. After the call, I decided to conduct a more systematic investigation. I opened my project management software and reviewed client files from the past year, looking for concepts that aligned with Maya's portfolio work. The connections were undeniable. Biodegradable materials research from a failed pitch to a cosmetics company, luxury environmental positioning strategies developed for a boutique beverage brand, supply chain cost analysis from a packaging optimization project, technical specifications gathered through months of professional networking and industry conferences. Maya had taken elements from multiple projects, synthesized them into cohesive concepts, and presented them as original student work. The sophistication that impressed potential employers came from professional experience she'd borrowed without permission or attribution. I closed the software and sat back in my chair, processing the implications. Maya hadn't simply copied finished designs. She demonstrated genuine creative thinking by combining my research into new applications. But the foundation of her portfolio relied on work product I'd developed through paid professional engagements. The situation felt complicated beyond simple theft or plagiarism. Maya had invested significant effort in developing presentations and applications. Her artistic vision was legitimate, even if the technical foundation wasn't entirely her own. She was talented enough to succeed independently, but had chosen to shortcut the learning process by accessing my professional resources. Sunday dinner at my parents' house carried an undercurrent of tension I tried to hide. Maya talked enthusiastically about her upcoming interviews, while my mother watched my reactions with careful attention. My father discussed his accounting firm's expansion plans, unaware of the family drama developing around the dining table. "Alex has been so helpful with professional guidance," Maya said, reaching for more salad. "I couldn't have put together such a strong portfolio without his mentorship." The word mentorship felt carefully chosen to suggest legitimate collaboration while obscuring the actual extent of resource sharing. "What kind of guidance did you provide?" my father asked, looking at me with genuine interest. "Portfolio organization, presentation techniques, industry context," I said, sticking to accurate descriptions. Alex also shared insights about client expectations and market positioning. Really valuable perspective for someone transitioning from fine arts to commercial design. Again, the statement was technically accurate while implying broader collaboration than had actually occurred. Maya was building a defense against potential accusations by framing unauthorized access to my files as natural knowledge sharing between family members in the same industry. After dinner, I helped my mother clear dishes while Maya and my father discussed interview strategies in the living room. Carmen waited until we were alone in the kitchen before speaking. "You've been quiet tonight. Just thinking about work stuff." Maya seems very confident about her prospects. She should be. Her portfolio is impressive. Carmen handed me a plate to dry. Sometimes impressive work comes with complicated stories. I looked at her directly. "What do you mean?" "Your sister has always been ambitious. Sometimes ambitious people find creative ways to achieve their goals." My mother's diplomatic phrasing acknowledged the situation without forcing me to make explicit accusations. She'd observed enough workplace dynamics to recognize when success stories contained hidden elements. Monday morning brought 3 more reference calls as Maya's interview process accelerated. Each conversation reinforced my certainty that she'd accessed my professional work to enhance her portfolio. The questions were too specific, the technical knowledge too advanced, the industry connections too sophisticated for a student working independently. By Tuesday, I'd documented enough evidence to confront Maya directly. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what she'd taken and how she planned to handle the interview process without access to my ongoing professional support. Wednesday evening, I received an email that changed everything. The sender was Dr. Rebecca Foster, Portfolio Review Coordinator at Parsons School of Design, my own alma mater. The subject line read, "Inquiry regarding alumni portfolio consultation." Dear Mr. Rivera, we've received a submission to our graduate program from Maya Rivera, who lists you as a professional collaborator on several design projects. While reviewing her application materials, we noticed striking similarities between her portfolio concepts and proprietary work samples from our industry database. Could you please schedule a call to discuss the nature of your collaborative relationship? I read the email 3 times before the implications were fully registered. Maya hadn't just applied for internships. She was trying to get into graduate school using my work as her foundation. Parsons maintained a database of professional design work for educational reference, which meant my client projects were cataloged there. Someone had noticed the connections between Maya's student portfolio and my professional submissions. I forwarded the email to my personal account and immediately called Dr. Foster's direct line. She answered on the second ring with a crisp efficiency of someone accustomed to handling academic misconduct investigations. Mr. Rivera, thank you for responding so quickly. I'll be direct about our concerns. Maya's portfolio demonstrates technical sophistication and industry knowledge that's unusual for undergraduate work. When we ran her concepts through our plagiarism detection software, we found significant overlap with professional submissions in our database. My stomach tightened. What kind of overlap?
Conceptual frameworks, technical specifications, research methodologies, even specific supplier contacts. The similarities suggest either extensive professional collaboration or unauthorized use of existing work. Dr. Foster explained that Parsons maintained strict policies about portfolio authenticity. Graduate applicants could include collaborative work, but all contributions had to be clearly attributed. Maya's application claimed sole authorship of concepts that appeared to incorporate proprietary professional research. I provided general mentorship, I said carefully, but Maya claimed independent development of those concepts. That's concerning. Could you send us documentation of your original work? We need to establish a timeline for concept development and determine the extent of any overlap. After hanging up, I spent the next hour gathering evidence. Original sketches dated before Maya's portfolio request, client emails discussing project development, research documents showing months of professional work leading to the concepts Maya had claimed as student projects. The timeline was damning. Every major element in Maya's portfolio could be traced to my professional work from the past year. She hadn't simply borrowed research methodologies or technical specifications. She'd taken comprehensive design concepts and repackaged them as original student work. Thursday morning, I drove to Maya's campus under the pretense of taking her to lunch. She was between classes, sitting in the art building courtyard with her laptop and several textbooks spread across a picnic table. When she saw me approaching, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you. How are the interviews going?" Maya's expression shifted to excitement mixed with nervous energy. "Really well, actually. Better than I expected. 3 companies want second interviews, and I have 2 campus visits scheduled for next week." She packed up her materials while describing interview highlights. Employers were impressed with her technical knowledge and industry connections. Several had commented on the professional quality of her portfolio presentation. One interviewer had specifically mentioned the sophistication of her supply chain analysis. "They keep asking about my research process," Maya said as we walked toward my car. "Like, how I developed such detailed cost projections and regulatory compliance documentation." "What do you tell them?" that I'm thorough, that I take research seriously. She paused. And that I had excellent professional mentorship from my brother. The casual way she deflected credit while implicating me in her deception felt calculated. Maya was protecting herself by suggesting broader collaboration than had actually occurred, creating plausible deniability if questions arose about her work's authenticity. We drove to a campus cafe where Maya ordered a salad and continued discussing her interview experiences. She'd impressed employers with knowledge of manufacturing processes, environmental regulations, and industry best practices, topics where student designers typically had limited expertise. One interviewer asked if she'd done any real client work, Maya said between bites. I explained that you'd let me observe some of your professional projects, which gave me practical insights beyond classroom theory. Another carefully crafted half-truth that positioned unauthorized access to my files as legitimate educational observation. Maya was building a comprehensive narrative that would explain any similarities between our work while maintaining her claims of independent concept development. After lunch, I suggested visiting her studio space to see her current projects. Maya hesitated, claiming she was between major works and didn't have much to show, but I persisted, and eventually she led me to a shared workspace in the art building's basement. Her station was meticulously organized, with reference materials, sketches, and printed portfolio samples arranged in neat categories. What struck me immediately was the absence of preliminary development work. No rough sketches, no research notes, no iterative concept development, only finished presentations and polished portfolio materials. "Where are your preliminary sketches?" I asked, examining the workspace. "Oh, I do most of my preliminary work digitally now. Saves paper and makes revisions easier." Maya opened her laptop and showed me folders of digital sketches, but the files were all dated within the past month, well after her portfolio submission deadlines. The preliminary work appeared to have been created retroactively, possibly to support her claims of independent concept development. I spent another hour reviewing her materials while Maya explained her design decisions. Her knowledge was impressive, but surface level, like someone who'd studied finished concepts without understanding the underlying development process. She could describe what made her solutions effective, but struggled to explain how she had arrived at those solutions. Friday brought another revelation when I checked my cloud storage access logs. The system tracked not only when files were accessed, but also when they were downloaded or shared. The logs showed extensive activity during the past month, with dozens of my research documents, client presentations, and concept development files being downloaded to an external device. The downloads had occurred systematically, organized by project and date. Someone had carefully harvested my professional work, creating a comprehensive archive of research materials, technical specifications, and design concepts. The timing aligned perfectly with Maya's interview preparation period. I cross-referenced the downloaded files with Maya's portfolio concepts and found direct correlation for every major element. Biodegradable packaging research from a failed cosmetics pitch, luxury environmental positioning strategies from a boutique beverage project, supply chain analysis from a packaging optimization study, even specific supplier contact information that Maya had somehow incorporated into her cost projections. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed to understand Maya's endgame before confronting her directly. Was she planning to maintain this deception throughout her career, or did she see it as a temporary shortcut to get established in commercial design? Saturday evening, I discovered the answer while helping my parents organize old files in their home office. Maya had left her portfolio case in the living room, and while my parents discussed document storage systems, I quietly examined her materials. Hidden behind the mounted presentation boards were printed emails from her interview contacts. But these weren't just follow-up messages about internship opportunities. Several companies had extended offers for full-time junior designer positions, bypassing the internship phase entirely based on the strength of her portfolio. One email from Target's sustainability division offered a starting salary of $75,000 plus benefits, with a signing bonus for candidates who could begin immediately after graduation. Another, from Procter & Gamble's Innovation Lab, proposed a contract position with potential for permanent hire based on project performance. Maya wasn't just using my work to get internships. She was leveraging it to secure professional positions that typically required years of experience. Companies were offering her senior-level opportunities based on expertise she'd borrowed without permission or attribution. The final piece of the puzzle came Sunday morning when Maya announced at breakfast that she'd accepted a position with Ecolux Brands, the sustainable packaging firm whose representative had called me for a reference 2 weeks earlier. "They're creating a new position specifically for me," Maya said, beaming with pride. "Senior Sustainability Designer, reporting directly to the creative director. They want someone who can bridge artistic vision with technical implementation." My parents congratulated her enthusiastically, while I struggled to process the implications. Maya had parlayed my professional work into a senior-level position at a major design firm, where she would be expected to deliver results based on expertise she didn't actually possess. "When do you start?" my mother asked. "2 weeks after graduation. They want me to hit the ground running on a major client project." Maya described the opportunity with infectious enthusiasm. Ecolux Brands was launching a new division focused on biodegradable luxury packaging, exactly the market segment her portfolio had targeted. They'd been impressed by her innovative concepts and wanted her to lead development of their flagship product line. The creative director said my portfolio was the most sophisticated student work he'd seen in years, Maya continued. He's excited to see what I can accomplish with professional resources and industry connections. I excused myself from the table and walked to my studio, where I sat among my own professional materials and tried to comprehend the scope of Maya's deception. She hadn't just borrowed my work to enhance her student portfolio. She'd used it to secure a senior-level position at a major design firm, where she would be expected to deliver results based on expertise she didn't actually possess. The situation had evolved beyond simple academic misconduct into professional fraud. Maya would be earning a significant salary while attempting to fulfill responsibilities that required knowledge and experience she'd stolen rather than developed independently. But perhaps most troubling was the realization that Maya seemed genuinely confident about her ability to succeed in the role. She'd convinced herself that borrowing my foundation work was simply a smart career strategy rather than fundamental dishonesty about her qualifications. Sunday afternoon, I received a final email that crystallized my decision to take action. Dr. Foster from Parsons had reviewed the evidence I'd submitted and determined that Maya's graduate application contained significant instances of uncredited professional work. "Based on our investigation," she wrote, "we're recommending that Maya's application be withdrawn pending a formal review of her undergraduate portfolio. We've also shared our findings with the appropriate faculty members at Cal State Northridge." Maya's academic misconduct was about to catch up with her, but she had no idea that her carefully constructed deception was unraveling. She was planning to graduate in 3 weeks and begin her new position at Ecolux Brands, confident that her borrowed expertise would carry her through the transition to professional design work. I had to decide whether to let the academic investigation proceed without warning Maya, or confront her directly about the theft of my work and the implications for her career prospects. Either choice would fundamentally alter our family relationships and Maya's professional trajectory. But I also had to consider the broader implications. Ecolux Brands was hiring Maya based on capabilities she didn't possess, expecting her to deliver results using expertise she'd misrepresented. Her first major project would likely expose the gap between her actual skills and her portfolio claims, potentially damaging both her career and the company's confidence in young designers. The choice was no longer just about protecting my own work or maintaining family harmony. It was about preventing a situation that would ultimately harm everyone involved, including Maya herself. Monday morning, I canceled all client meetings and dedicated the day to strategic planning. The evidence against Maya was comprehensive, but confronting her required careful consideration of timing, approach, and desired outcomes. This wasn't just about protecting my intellectual property anymore. Maya's deception had created a complex web of consequences that would affect multiple parties. I started by creating a detailed timeline of events, beginning with Maya's initial portfolio request and ending with her job offer from Ecolex Brands. Each entry included supporting documentation, file access logs, email correspondence, reference call notes, and academic investigation updates. The pattern of systematic theft was undeniable when presented chronologically. Next, I researched Ecolex Brands to understand what Maya would be walking into. The company had been founded 3 years earlier by former executives from major consumer goods corporations. Their client roster included several Fortune 500 companies looking to improve their environmental credentials through innovative packaging solutions. Ecolex's website featured case studies that emphasized technical expertise, regulatory compliance, and supply chain optimization. Exactly the areas where Maya's portfolio had demonstrated suspicious sophistication. The company's recent press releases mentioned significant expansion plans and new client acquisitions that would require immediate contribution from senior-level hires. Maya would be expected to deliver results from day one, working on projects with budgets exceeding my entire annual revenue. Her borrowed expertise might carry her through initial conversations, but she'd be exposed quickly when asked to develop original solutions under professional pressure. I spent the afternoon drafting 3 different approaches to the confrontation. The first was direct accusation backed by comprehensive evidence. The second focused on giving Maya an opportunity to voluntarily withdraw from her position before the deception was discovered. The third involved contacting Ecolux directly to warn them about the situation.
Each approach carried different risks and potential outcomes. Direct confrontation might prompt Maya to become defensive and double down on her deception. Offering her a chance to withdraw gracefully might enable her to transition to a more appropriate position while saving face. Contacting Ecolex directly would protect the company, but might destroy Maya's career entirely. Tuesday brought an unexpected complication when Jennifer Walsh from Ecolux called my studio line. I'd spoken with her 2 weeks earlier when she was conducting reference checks, but this conversation had a different tone entirely. "Alex, I'm calling because we've encountered some irregularities in Maya's background verification," Jennifer said without preamble. "Our standard procedure includes academic transcript review and portfolio authentication. Some concerns have been raised about the originality of her submitted work." My pulse quickened. What kind of concerns? Technical specifications that match proprietary research from our industry database, supplier contacts that aren't typically accessible to students, cost analysis methodologies that suggest professional consulting experience. Jennifer explained that Ecolux maintained relationships with major design schools and regularly reviewed student portfolios for recruitment purposes. Maya's work had triggered their plagiarism detection systems, which cross-referenced submissions against a database of professional projects and academic work. "We're particularly concerned about similarities to work in your own professional portfolio," Jennifer continued. "The conceptual frameworks and technical approaches are nearly identical in several cases." The conversation lasted 30 minutes, with Jennifer asking detailed questions about my relationship with Maya, the nature of any collaborative work, and my knowledge of her design process. I provided honest answers while avoiding explicit accusations, explaining that I'd offered general mentorship but hadn't collaborated on specific projects. "Based on our investigation," Jennifer concluded, "we're placing Maya's employment offer on hold pending resolution of these authenticity questions. We'll need written confirmation from you regarding the extent of any collaborative work before proceeding." After hanging up, I realized that Maya's deception was collapsing faster than I'd anticipated. Multiple institutions were conducting independent investigations that would soon converge on the same conclusion. Maya had no idea that her carefully constructed narrative was being systematically dismantled.
I decided to give Maya one opportunity to address the situation voluntarily before it became completely public. But first, I needed to prepare for every possible response she might have to being confronted with evidence of her theft. Wednesday evening, I invited Maya to dinner at a restaurant near campus, choosing a public location that would encourage calm discussion rather than emotional outbursts. She arrived wearing a new professional blazer and carrying a leather portfolio case, already dressing for her anticipated career transition. "You look ready for the corporate world," I said as she sat down. Maya smiled proudly. "Ecolux wants me to attend a client presentation next week just to observe their process before I officially start. I'm so excited to see how major design firms operate." She spent the first course describing her preparation for the new position. She'd been researching Ecolux's client base, studying their previous projects, and practicing presentations for potential design challenges. Her enthusiasm was genuine, which made the situation more complicated. "Maya, I need to ask you something important about your portfolio development process." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What kind of question?" "Several companies have contacted me with concerns about the technical sophistication of your work. They're wondering how you acquired certain industry knowledge and supplier connections." Maya set down her fork and straightened in her chair. "I told you I did extensive research through academic databases and industry publications." "What about the cost analysis spreadsheets? Those reference wholesale pricing that isn't publicly available." "I must have found that information through university resources. Cal State has access to a lot of industry data." Maya's responses sounded rehearsed, like she'd anticipated these questions and prepared defensive answers. But her body language suggested growing nervousness. She was fidgeting with her napkin and avoiding direct eye contact. "The thing is," I continued, "I have access logs showing that someone downloaded dozens of my professional files during the past month. Files that contain exactly the research and technical specifications that appear in your portfolio." The color drained from Maya's face. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it without speaking. For several seconds, we sat in silence while she processed the implications of being confronted with direct evidence of her theft. "Alex, I can explain," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm listening." Maya looked around the restaurant, confirming that nearby tables weren't paying attention to our conversation. Then she leaned forward and spoke in urgent, quiet tones. "I never meant for it to go this far. When I first asked for help with portfolio presentation, I was genuinely just trying to learn your organizational techniques." She explained that accessing my files had started accidentally. While using my computer for software she couldn't afford, she'd discovered research documents that were directly relevant to her interests in sustainable design. Initially, she'd only intended to read them for educational purposes. "But then I realized how sophisticated your work was compared to what I was producing in school. The technical depth, the industry connections, the professional presentation quality. I knew I couldn't compete with other applicants using only student-level work." Maya described a gradual escalation. First, she'd incorporated some of my research methodologies into her own projects. Then she'd begun using my technical specifications as starting points for her own concepts. Finally, she'd built entire portfolio pieces around frameworks I'd developed for professional clients.
"I convinced myself it was just a smart career strategy," she said. "Like using available resources to create the strongest possible application materials. I never thought of it as stealing because I was adding my own creative vision to your technical foundation." The rationalization was exactly what I'd expected. Maya had convinced herself that borrowing my work was acceptable because she'd invested creative effort in developing presentations and applications. She'd minimized the significance of using proprietary professional research while maximizing the importance of her own contributions. "Maya, you built a senior-level job offer on expertise you don't actually possess," I said. "What happens when Ecolux expects you to deliver results based on capabilities you've misrepresented?" Her confident facade cracked entirely. I thought I could learn quickly enough to catch up, like fake it till you make it, you know? Lots of people exaggerate their qualifications to get good positions. Maya's naivety about professional expectations was stunning. She seemed to believe that enthusiasm and artistic talent would compensate for fundamental gaps in technical knowledge and industry experience. She had no realistic understanding of what would be expected from a senior designer at a major firm. The problem is that multiple investigations are already underway, I explained. Parsons has flagged your graduate application for academic misconduct. Ecolux has placed your job offer on hold pending authenticity verification. Cal State is reviewing your undergraduate portfolio for policy violations. Maya's hands began trembling. What does that mean for my job? It means you need to make some difficult decisions very quickly. I outlined her options as I saw them. She could voluntarily withdraw from Ecolux and attempt to find an entry-level position appropriate to her actual experience level. She could try to defend her work and hope the investigations wouldn't find sufficient evidence of misconduct. Or she could work with me to develop a plan for acknowledging the collaboration while preserving as much of her career prospects as possible. What would you do? Maya asked, her voice breaking slightly. I'd take responsibility for the situation and focus on rebuilding trust through honest representation of my capabilities. Maya stared at her untouched dinner while processing the reality of her situation. Her carefully planned career transition was collapsing, and she had to choose between voluntary admission of wrongdoing or hoping to survive formal investigations by multiple institutions. How much time do I have to decide? Ecolux wants written confirmation about our collaboration by Friday. Parsons is conducting their review this week. Cal State will probably contact you directly once they receive the investigative reports. The timeline was accelerating beyond Maya's control. Even if she decided to come clean about the theft, she might not be able to get ahead of the institutional investigations that were already in progress. Thursday morning, Maya called my studio line while I was reviewing client emails. Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been awake all night thinking through her options. Alex, I want to fix this situation, but I need your help. Could we meet today to discuss how to handle the investigations? I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near campus that afternoon. When I arrived, Maya was already there with a legal pad covered in handwritten notes. She'd apparently spent hours researching academic misconduct policies and employment law implications. She'd developed a plan that involved partial admission of inappropriate collaboration while arguing that the work represented legitimate mentorship rather than outright theft. She believed she could frame the situation as an educational mistake rather than intentional fraud. The key is controlling the narrative. If I can get ahead of the investigations and present my side of the story first, I might be able to preserve some career options. Maya's approach demonstrated continued misunderstanding of the situation's severity. She was still thinking in terms of damage control and narrative management, rather than taking full responsibility for systematic theft of professional work. I realized that confronting Maya directly wouldn't be sufficient to resolve the situation. She was too invested in her rationalized version of events to acknowledge the full scope of her wrongdoing. A more comprehensive intervention would be necessary to prevent further damage to all parties involved. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitable resolution. I'd spent Thursday evening organizing every piece of evidence into a comprehensive presentation that would leave no room for denial or rationalization. Maya's attempts to control the narrative had convinced me that only complete transparency would prevent further damage to everyone involved. At 9 a.m., I called Jennifer Walsh at Ecolux Brands and requested a meeting to discuss Maya's situation in detail. Jennifer's response was immediate and professional. "We've been hoping to hear from you. Our investigation has raised serious concerns about intellectual property theft. Could you come in this afternoon? Our legal team would like to be present." I agreed to a 2 p.m. meeting at Ecolex's Los Angeles office, giving me time to drive there with all necessary documentation. Before leaving Riverside, I sent Maya a text message. "Meeting with Ecolex at 2 today to discuss the situation. You should know that I'm bringing comprehensive evidence of the file downloads and work appropriation." Maya called within minutes, her voice tight with panic.
Alex, please don't do anything irreversible. I'm trying to work out a solution that protects everyone. The solution is honesty. The investigations are happening with or without my cooperation. At least this way, the facts will be presented accurately.
Maya's focus remained on preserving her job opportunity rather than addressing the fundamental dishonesty that had created the crisis. She still believed the situation could be managed through careful presentation rather than genuine accountability. Maya, your career isn't over, but it needs to be based on your actual capabilities, not work you've stolen from me. After hanging up, I loaded my car with printed evidence, digital files, and timeline documentation. The drive to Los Angeles gave me time to prepare for a conversation that would definitively end Maya's deception while hopefully protecting Ecolux from the consequences of hiring an unqualified candidate. Ecolux's office occupied 2 floors of a modern building in Santa Monica, with open workspaces showcasing current packaging design projects. Jennifer Walsh met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room where 3 other people waited: the creative director, a legal representative, and someone identified as the head of talent acquisition. "Thank you for coming in," Jennifer began. "We've been investigating Maya's portfolio for the past week, and your evidence will help us understand the full scope of the situation." I spent the next hour presenting my findings chronologically: the timeline of Maya's portfolio request, the file access logs showing systematic downloading of my professional work, the correlation between my client projects and her portfolio concepts, and the reference calls that had revealed her lack of genuine expertise. The creative corrector, David Chen, asked detailed questions about the technical specifications in Maya's portfolio. When I showed him my original research documents and client development files, his expression shifted from concern to dismay. "These aren't just similar concepts," David said, comparing printouts side by side. "They're identical research methodologies, supplier analyses, and cost projections. She's taken your professional work and repackaged it as student projects." The legal representative, Sarah Kim, focused on intellectual property implications. She explained that Maya's portfolio included proprietary research that belonged to my clients, not just my personal work. Using that information in job applications could expose Ecolux to legal liability if they hired her based on stolen intellectual property. "From a risk management perspective," Sarah continued, "we cannot proceed with Maya's employment. The potential legal exposure outweighs any benefit from her artistic capabilities." The head of talent acquisition, Michael Torres, looked genuinely disappointed. "Maya impressed everyone during her interviews. Her presentation skills and creative vision were exactly what we were looking for in this position." That's the tragedy of this situation. Maya is genuinely talented, but she shortcutted the learning process instead of developing her capabilities honestly. David asked if I would be willing to provide written testimony for their investigation file. He said, "We need comprehensive documentation in case Maya attempts to pursue legal action against us for withdrawing the job offer." I agreed and spent another hour drafting a formal statement detailing the timeline of events, the evidence of file theft, and my conclusion that Maya had misrepresented her qualifications through systematic appropriation of my professional work. By 4 p.m., Ecolux had officially withdrawn Maya's job offer and flagged her profile in their recruiting database. They would also be sharing their findings with other firms in their professional network to prevent Maya from attempting similar deception elsewhere. Jennifer walked me to the lobby after the meeting concluded. She said, "I'm sorry this situation developed. Maya clearly has artistic talent, but professional design requires integrity along with creativity." Driving back to Riverside, I called Maya to inform her that the Ecolux opportunity was definitively over. She answered on the first ring, her voice hopeful. "How did the meeting go?
Were you able to explain the collaboration aspect? Maya, there was no collaboration. You stole my work, and Ecolux has withdrawn your job offer. The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds. When Maya finally spoke, her voice was flat and defeated. So that's it. My career is over. Your career based on stolen work is over. Your actual career can begin whenever you're ready to be honest about your capabilities. Maya asked if there was any possibility of salvaging the situation, perhaps by accepting a lower-level position at Ecolux or demonstrating that she could learn quickly enough to justify their initial interest. Maya, they've flagged you in their database and shared their findings with other firms. The design industry is smaller than you think. Word travels. That evening, Maya appeared at my studio door without calling ahead. She looked exhausted, with red-rimmed eyes that suggested she'd been crying. She carried a manila envelope that she handed to me without explanation. "What is this?" I asked. "Copies of everything I took from your files, and a written apology acknowledging what I did." I opened the envelope and found printed copies of dozens of my research documents, client presentations, and technical specifications. Each page was marked with Maya's handwriting, identifying which elements she'd incorporated into her portfolio and how she'd used my work to enhance her applications. The written apology was 3 pages long, typed and signed. Maya acknowledged systematic theft of my intellectual property, admitted to misrepresenting her qualifications to potential employers, and accepted full responsibility for the consequences of her actions. "I want to make this right," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to at least be honest about it now." I read through the documentation while Maya stood silently in my studio doorway. Her confession was comprehensive and unambiguous, leaving no room for continued rationalization or blame shifting. "This is a good start," I said, "but there are still academic investigations to address."
Maya nodded miserably. Parsons officially rejected my graduate application yesterday. Cal State wants to meet with me next week about potential sanctions for my undergraduate portfolio. The institutional consequences were accelerating as I had predicted. Maya's deception had created a cascade of investigations that would follow her throughout her academic and professional life. "What are you planning to do now?" I asked. "I don't know. Everything I thought I wanted was built on your work. I need to figure out what I can actually accomplish on my own." Maya's acknowledgement of her situation was more honest than anything she'd said during the past month. She was finally confronting the reality that her perceived capabilities were based on borrowed expertise, rather than personal development. "You're talented enough to succeed honestly," I said, "but you'll need to start from an appropriate entry level and build your experience legitimately." Maya nodded, then asked if I would be willing to serve as a reference for entry-level positions once she completed her degree. "I know I have no right to ask, but I want potential employers to hear the truth about my capabilities directly from you." The request surprised me. After weeks of deception and rationalization, Maya was finally asking for help in presenting her actual qualifications rather than inflated credentials. "If you're completely honest about what happened and demonstrate genuine change, yes, I'll provide honest references about your actual capabilities." Maya thanked me and turned to leave, then paused at the studio door. "Alex, I'm sorry I put you in this position. I convinced myself that borrowing your work was a smart career strategy, but I see now that it was just theft." After she left, I sat in my studio processing the emotional complexity of the situation. Maya's apology seemed genuine, and her acknowledgement of wrongdoing was more complete than I had expected. But the damage to her academic standing and professional reputation would follow her for years. Saturday morning brought a call from Dr. Foster at Parsons, informing me that Maya had voluntarily withdrawn her graduate application and provided a written confession of academic misconduct. "We appreciate your cooperation in this investigation," Dr. Foster said. "Maya's honesty in acknowledging her mistakes will be noted in our files."
Sunday dinner at my parents' house was subdued. Maya had told them about losing the Ecolux position, though she'd framed it as a misunderstanding about collaboration expectations, rather than admitting to theft. My parents were disappointed but supportive, encouraging Maya to view the setback as a learning experience. I chose not to correct Maya's narrative during family dinner. She would need to decide how much truth to share with our parents on her own timeline. My role was to ensure that her professional deception didn't continue, not to manage her family relationships. Monday morning, I received an unexpected email from David Chen at Ecolux. "Alex, we were impressed by your professionalism during our investigation. Would you be interested in discussing freelance opportunities? We have several projects that could benefit from your expertise in sustainable packaging design." The irony was perfect. Maya's theft of my work had inadvertently introduced me to a company that could become a significant client. Her deception had ultimately led to legitimate professional opportunities for the person's work she'd stolen. I scheduled a call with David for later that week to discuss potential collaboration. Unlike Maya's shortcut approach, any relationship with Ecolux would be built on honest representation of my capabilities and transparent discussion of project requirements. Maya's attempt to steal her way into a successful career had collapsed completely, but the consequences were finally aligning with reality. She would need to rebuild her professional prospects based on actual abilities rather than borrowed expertise. And I would move forward with new opportunities earned through legitimate means. 3 weeks after the Ecolux confrontation, my studio phone rang with an opportunity that would transform my freelance practice into something I'd never imagined possible. David Chen's voice carried the crisp enthusiasm of someone delivering genuinely exciting news. "Alex, we'd like to offer you a 6-month contract to lead our new sustainable packaging initiative," David said. "Based on your portfolio and the professionalism you demonstrated during our investigation, we believe you're exactly what we need for this expansion." The contract terms were remarkable: $120,000 for 6 months of work, with potential for permanent employment if the project succeeded. They wanted me to develop proprietary packaging solutions for 3 major clients, using the same research methodologies and technical expertise that Maya had stolen, but now applying them legitimately. "The irony isn't lost on us," David continued. "Maya's deception led us to discover a designer whose work we actually needed. Sometimes the best outcomes emerge from the worst situations." I accepted the offer immediately, then spent the afternoon calling my regular clients to discuss transitioning their projects to other freelancers. The Ecolux contract would require my full attention, but it represented the kind of career advancement that typically took years to achieve through gradual client building. Maya's theft had inadvertently fast-tracked my professional development in ways her deception had attempted to do for her. The difference was that my opportunity was earned through demonstrated integrity rather than borrowed expertise. Thursday brought Maya's graduation from Cal State, a ceremony I attended with mixed emotions. She walked across the stage to receive her bachelor's degree in fine arts, but without the academic honor she'd been expecting. Her undergraduate portfolio review had resulted in several course grades being reduced due to unauthorized use of external materials. After the ceremony, Maya approached me in the parking lot where our parents were taking photos with other families. She wore her cap and gown, but looked subdued rather than celebratory. "Congratulations on the Ecolux contract," Maya said quietly. "Mom told me about your new position." "Thank you. How are you feeling about graduation?"
Maya glanced toward our parents, who were chatting with other faculty families near the administration building. "Relieved to be done, honestly. The past month has been harder than I expected." She'd spent the week since her confession working with Cal State's Academic Integrity Office to address the portfolio violations. While she'd avoided formal disciplinary action due to her voluntary disclosure, the investigation had required her to resubmit several major projects using only her original work. "The hardest part wasn't redoing the assignments," Maya continued. "It was realizing how much better I am when I work honestly. The new portfolio pieces aren't as technically sophisticated as what I submitted with your research, but they're actually mine." Maya's revised portfolio emphasized her artistic strengths rather than attempting to demonstrate technical expertise she didn't possess. The work was visually striking and conceptually innovative, showcasing her genuine capabilities without borrowed professional foundation. "What are your plans now?" I asked.
I got accepted to an entry-level position at a small design studio in Pasadena. It's mostly production work and client coordination, but they're willing to let me develop my skills gradually. The position was appropriate for Maya's actual experience level, offering mentorship and training rather than expecting her to deliver senior-level results immediately. I also started seeing a counselor, Maya added. I need to understand why I convinced myself that stealing your work was an acceptable career strategy. Maya's commitment to addressing the psychological aspects of her deception impressed me more than her academic remediation efforts. She was finally confronting the mindset that had enabled her to rationalize systematic theft as smart professional positioning. Friday evening, our family gathered for dinner to celebrate Maya's graduation and my new contract. The conversation was careful, with everyone avoiding direct discussion of the events that had led to these outcomes, but the underlying dynamics had shifted in ways that felt permanent. Maya no longer positioned herself as an equal professional peer, instead asking genuine questions about industry practices and entry-level career development. Alex, could you explain how client relationships develop over time? Maya asked during dessert. I want to understand realistic expectations for building a professional practice. I spent an hour describing the gradual process of establishing credibility, delivering consistent results, and expanding capabilities through legitimate professional experience. Maya took notes on her phone, treating my advice as valuable mentorship rather than information she was entitled to access. The conversation felt like the collaboration Maya had originally claimed we'd engaged in. Genuine knowledge sharing between family members with appropriate attribution and realistic expectations about learning timelines. Friday evening, I drove to Ecolux' Santa Monica office to begin my contract work. The building felt different as an employee rather than an investigative witness. I was given a private office, access to their professional software systems, and introduction to the 3 major clients whose projects I would be leading. The first client was an organic food company seeking packaging that would decompose completely within 90 days of disposal. The second was a cosmetics brand wanting luxury presentation without environmental compromise. The third was a beverage startup needing solutions that would scale from artisanal production to mass market distribution. Each project required exactly the kind of comprehensive research and technical development that Maya had appropriated from my files, but now I was applying that expertise in a legitimate professional context with proper resources and collaborative support from other specialists. Jennifer Walsh introduced me to the team I'd be working with: 2 junior designers, a materials engineer, and a regulatory compliance specialist. They'd been briefed on my background and the circumstances that had led to my hiring, but they focused entirely on project requirements rather than the Maya situation. We're excited to see what you can accomplish with proper institutional support, Jennifer said during my orientation meeting. Your preliminary concepts suggest you think about sustainability challenges in ways that could revolutionize our industry approach. Monday brought the first client presentation, where I introduced packaging concepts I'd been developing since accepting the contract. The organic food company's representatives were enthusiastic about solutions that integrated compostable materials with premium visual presentation. These designs solve problems we didn't even know we had, said their marketing director, studying mock-ups I'd created over the weekend. The technical sophistication combined with artistic vision is exactly what we need to differentiate our products. The meeting concluded with approval to proceed to prototype development, along with a budget authorization that exceeded my previous annual freelance revenue. I was building legitimate professional success using the same skills Maya had attempted to steal, but earning it through honest representation of my capabilities. Tuesday evening, Maya called to ask if I'd be willing to provide a professional reference for a freelance project she was considering. A local nonprofit needed branding materials for an environmental awareness campaign, work that aligned with her artistic interests and actual skill level. I want to make sure they understand what I can realistically deliver, Maya said. No more overselling my capabilities or borrowing expertise I don't have. I agreed to serve as a reference, emphasizing Maya's artistic strengths while being honest about her limited technical experience. The nonprofit hired her for logo design and print materials, projects that matched her genuine qualifications. Over the following weeks, Maya sent me updates about her legitimate freelance work.
The projects were smaller and less technically complex than what she attempted to secure through deception, but she was completing them successfully and building genuine professional experience. "It feels different when the success is actually mine," Maya texted after delivering her first client presentation. "Scary, but honest." Her progress reminded me that talent and integrity could coexist when ambition was channeled appropriately. Maya had always possessed the artistic vision necessary for design success. She'd simply needed to develop professional capabilities at a realistic pace rather than attempting to shortcut the learning process.
6 weeks into my Ecolux contract, David Chen approached me about permanent employment with equity participation in the company's expansion plans. "Your work has exceeded our expectations," he said. "We'd like you to consider becoming our creative director for sustainable innovations." The offer represented professional advancement that would have taken years to achieve through traditional freelance growth. But it was earned through legitimate expertise demonstrated under professional pressure, not borrowed through systematic theft. I accepted the position, knowing that my career trajectory had been permanently altered by Maya's deception. Her attempt to steal her way to success had ultimately led to opportunities that benefited the person whose work she'd appropriated. 3 months later, Maya was promoted to junior designer at her Pasadena studio, earning recognition for original work that showcased her genuine capabilities. She'd built legitimate professional momentum by focusing on appropriate projects rather than attempting to demonstrate expertise she didn't possess. The family dynamics had stabilized around honest acknowledgement of our respective career paths. Maya asked for professional advice when appropriate, but she no longer positioned herself as an equal peer or attempted to access my work without permission. "I'm grateful the deception collapsed when it did," Maya said during a recent family dinner. "I would have been exposed eventually, and the consequences would have been worse if I'd gotten further into the professional world before being discovered." Her perspective had matured beyond viewing the situation as a temporary setback. She understood that building a legitimate career required authentic capability development rather than strategic misrepresentation. My new role at Ecolux had led to industry recognition that opened additional opportunities. Design publications featured my sustainable packaging innovations, and other companies began approaching me about consulting arrangements. Professional success built on integrity created a foundation for continued growth. The contrast with Maya's experience was instructive. Her shortcuts had led to immediate collapse and long-term reputation damage. My methodical approach had resulted in sustainable advancement based on demonstrated capabilities. 6 months after Maya's graduation, she sent me a portfolio of work she'd completed independently. The designs were visually striking and conceptually sophisticated, showcasing artistic maturity that had developed through honest professional practice. "I wanted you to see what I can accomplish when I work within my actual capabilities," her email said. "It's taken longer than I originally wanted, but the success feels real." Maya's portfolio demonstrated genuine professional growth earned through legitimate experience. She'd developed technical skills through appropriate mentorship and project work, building expertise that belonged to her rather than being borrowed from others. The situation had resolved with consequences that aligned with everyone's actions. Maya's deception had led to professional setbacks that required honest rebuilding. My integrity had led to opportunities that exceeded my original career expectations. The companies involved had protected themselves from hiring unqualified candidates while discovering genuinely valuable expertise. The new boundaries we'd established were based on realistic assessment of capabilities, rather than family obligation or artificial support. Maya earned professional guidance through demonstrated commitment to honest development. I provided mentorship when she approached projects within her actual skill level. The design industry's small professional network had absorbed the lessons from Maya's case. Other firms now conducted more thorough background verification, protecting themselves from similar deception while identifying genuine talent through appropriate evaluation processes.
Maya's story became a cautionary tale shared informally among design professionals, emphasizing the importance of authentic portfolio development and the career consequences of misrepresenting qualifications. But it also demonstrated that recovery was possible through genuine accountability and commitment to honest professional practice. The resolution wasn't dramatic or emotionally cathartic. It was practical, measured, and focused on long-term professional sustainability rather than immediate gratification. Maya learned to build success through legitimate means. I learned to protect my work while maintaining family relationships. The industry learned to verify credentials more thoroughly while supporting authentic talent development. Everyone moved forward with clearer boundaries, realistic expectations, and honest representation of capabilities. The new normal was built on truth rather than convenient fiction, creating a foundation for sustainable professional relationships and genuine career advancement.